Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. Today we're going to be looking at the Sketch Toon effect in Cinema 4D. We're going to see how it can improve the overall look of our projects and how we can utilize it to basically make a unique effect that most people don't even know about. We're going to create an eyeball, and on the eyeball we're going to have a blanket fall down on top of it. It's going to be blown off, and then the eyeball is going to open up and close, and all of this is going to be done using the Sketch Toon effect. Okay, so stay tuned. Here we go. Okay guys, let's get started. We're going to create a sphere and we're going to rename this to eyeball. Okay, just zoom out a little bit there, and we want to create our blanket. So create a plane and rename this to blanket. Let's bring it up here along the y-axis, nice and high, so it has a good distance to fall down. And we're going to increase the width here and the height ever so slightly. Okay, cool. Just going to bring the overall scale down just a little bit. Cool, okay. Now we want to add our blanket to a subdivision surface. Hold down Alt on your keyboard and then select subdivision. That will automatically make the subdivision a parent of our blanket. And now that is looking nice and smooth. As you can see, we got loads of subdivisions. Okay. Now what we want to do is, I'm just going to bring this up a little bit more. We want to make our blanket editable, and we want to add a cloth tag. Now the reason we made this editable is because the cloth tag is not going to work unless the object is editable. So we also need to add a cloth collider tag to our eyeball object. If we don't do that, then our cloth tag is our blanket is just going to fall right through our eyeball. So we need to add one of those cloth collider tags, and now we can see what we got. Okay, so let's increase our frame range, and let's have a look at this. What's going on here? So we can see we got some issues here. It's kind of, the geometry is kind of sticking together, or however you'd call it. Looks like it's pinching a bit. So to fix that, we want to click on our cloth tag, and we are going to bring up our iterations to 5. Let's try that and see what that does for us. Okay, so that seems to have fixed that issue right away. Cool. I'm just going to turn off my grid. There we go. And okay. So next we want to set up a camera. Let's make it active, and let's zero it out on the X, Y, and Z axes, and we're going to do the same for rotation. We want to set this to -90, so our camera is looking down on our eyeball, and we're going to zoom out along the y-axis there to about here. And let's hit play there and see what that looks like. So this is the view we're going to have in our video. And that's already looking pretty nice. Okay, so we want to create a material for our eyeballs. Double click in your materials panel here, and we'll rename this to eyeball. And let's open that up, and we want to hide our subdivision surface so we can see our eyeball, and we're going to apply our eyeball material to our eyeball object. Now we want to create a pupil in the middle of our eyeball. So to do that, go to Color, Texture, and Gradient. Click into our gradient, and we're going to make this circular. We want this to be red. I'm going to have a nice red pupil. and this is going to be white. So we want to invert this so that our red is going to be in the center and our white's going to be on the outside. Invert gradient. You can just right click here and go to invert gradient. And let's bring this down so that our pupil gets smaller. Now, as you can see, our pupil's on the left side of our sphere, so we want to rotate our sphere, or on your keypad, and hold down shift so you can rotate in increments of 10 degrees and snap that to 90 degrees. Okay, so let's set our gradient to step. Actually, we'll go back to smooth. It'll be better smooth. And we want to make our gradient shape circular. So to do that, click on our material, on our texture tag, make sure our eyeball object is selected, and go here to our texture mode. Then go to scale, and we can scale that down. So we got a nice circular shape to our pupil. So let's have a look at this now. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to turn on Sketch and Toon, the Sketch and Toon effect, because this is what's going to make our project look different. Let's render this and see what it looks like. Okay, so there's the Sketch and Toon effect taking place there. It's looking pretty cool, but we still need to. So what we did do is we scaled down our eyeball to make it circular. I'm just going to undo what I just did there. But we didn't set our texture tag to spherical. And now it should be looking more circular. Okay, so I am actually going to set this gradient to step. So click on your drop down arrow there and set this to step. So we don't have our knots selected, so you can lasso them and then set that to step. Okay. So as you can see, this is looking terrible, so we need to fix it up. So we need to drag our white knot down so that our red pupil becomes much smaller than it was. Let's hit render to see what that looks like. So you can see we got jagged edges. We can fix that by going to render settings, anti-aliasing, and setting this to best, and 1 by 1 and 2 by 2. Let's render that again. So now it's nice and smooth. Okay. So we want to create some, we want to make our pupil white in the middle and with a bit of black also. So we're gonna bring this red over a little bit, and we're gonna create a white knot there. That's going to give us our white circle in the middle, and we are going to add a black outline just after the red there. This actually has to go before the red. Okay, so that's looking nice. It's still, it doesn't seem perfectly circular, so to fix that, just like before, click on the texture tag, eyeball, object, make sure that our texture mode is selected, and I'm just going to try and, so you can change the shape of it here, dragging the scale along the using this square here. Okay, so that's looking better now, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to set the interpolation to back to blend, or smooth, I should say. So we need to make sure to select all our knots and set that to smooth. So that's looking better. We can increase the overall size of our pupil by dragging these out like this. And I want my red to be inside the black part here. So I'm gonna deselect. Okay, so I just created a new knot. To delete that, you can just click and drag it down and it'll be deleted. Bring our black over here, so now that our red is inside our black. And okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's see what that looks like. So it's looking pretty cool, but it could look better if we add some if we add a Beckman reflection We want to, let's turn on our interactive render viewer. And we'll bring up the render quality there. Bring down the brightness. So as you can see, that's looking much cooler. But our circle seems to be not much of a circle anymore again. So I'm going to try and fix that again. Same way. And I'm just going to drag this down here. And okay, cool. So I'm happy enough with that. Now, let's see what we got when we hit play. So our blanket is turned off. So we need to turn it back on. And so our blanket falls down. Now let's see. So you can see that our blanket, our eyeball basically is showing through our blanket. So to fix that, we are going to create a cloth surface object. And we're going to make our subdivision surface a child of that. And we are going to add thickness. So click on cloth surface object and go into the object tab. And let's add 1 centimeter of thickness. And you can see that that's fixed our issue there. So let's continue on there. So we want our blanket to be blown off our eyeball in this direction. So along the x-axis. So to do that, we want to click on our cloth tag. I'll just pause this for a second. And we want to add some wind along the x-axis. So we're going to go minus 300 in the x direction. So it's going to go left. And we're going to add a wind strength of, we'll say 2. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we can reduce the wind strength because the blanket blew off a bit too fast. So I'm going to go 1.2 on that. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. Okay, so that's cool. Our blanket doesn't take too long to be blown off, but it doesn't get blown off too quickly either, so I'm happy enough with that. Let's go and create a material for our blanket. And this is going to be, let's add our material to our blanket object. And we are going to make the color to be a nice bright red. And we're going to turn on our bump channel and we're going to create a noise. Go into our noise and set the noise type to cranial. And that is going to give us a nice effect there. We can increase the global scale just a little bit. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. Now, let's see what this is looking like. So our blanket falls down. So we want to create our eyelid now. So I'm going to turn off our blanket again. And we want to create an eyelid for our eyeball. So to do that, just hold Control, drag down to duplicate our eyeball object. Let's call this eyelid. We will create an eyelid material. And we can make this to be just a lighter gray color. And let's add that to our eyeball object. We can actually drag our material to the previous. So we're going to add it to our eyelid object. We can just drag it and release over here, and that'll overwrite the existing material that's been applied. Cool. So we need to increase the radius of this to 103. And now we have our eyelid. So we want to cut half of this sphere away, basically. So let's make this editable. C on your keypad. And let's deactivate this camera. I'm just going to turn off the interactive render view. And I'm going to zoom in here. NB on your keyboard to show lines. So we want to rotate this 90 degrees to make our life a bit easier when it comes to deleting off these polygons. Hold down Shift on your keypad hold down shift after you press your click on your mouse, otherwise it won't work. Then you'll be able to rotate in iterations of 10 degrees. Once you get to 90, release the click. And okay, so that didn't work because our texture mode is selected. We need to go to model mode. Click there and let's try that again. Okay, cool. So our eyelid is editable and we want to go to polygon mode. Let's go to our rectangle selection and let's just grab the bottom polygons from here. So we haven't got them all. We can press UL to go to loop selection mode, and we can hold down shift to select that last loop of polygons there. Delete on your keyboard, and now we have, if we just make this camera active again, now we have our eyelid. So what we want to do is we want to animate this. So let's just turn on our blanket again. And so we want to animate our eyeball. Just going to make sure that everything is looking good here. So we still have a bit of pinching going on. Let's see if we can fix that. So what's going on? It's not actually pinching, it's the geometry is intersecting. So it's cutting through itself. So what we can do is go to our cloth tag and we can go to the expert tab, turn on self collision. And now our blanket will, that should fix our problem basically. The blanket will collide with itself and you're not going to get this intersecting geometry, which is going to look way better. It's not going to look rubbish anyway. So cool. Let's go back and activate this camera and let's see. So what we want to do is animate our eyeball or our eyelid so that it opens up and you're presented with the eyeball just as the blanket goes off. So I'm going to pause it there and we'll go to the next frame. We'll play it a little bit more. Okay, so around here, this is where our eyeball is going to begin to open. I keep saying eyeball, I mean eyelid. So click on your eyelid object, and we want to set a keyframe for rotation. We don't need position, we don't need scale, and we don't need parameters. All we need is rotation. So let's add a keyframe there, and we will add our next keyframe here on frame 214. So we're going to rotate our eyeball. We need to make sure that our model mode is selected. Now we can rotate our eyeball all the way up so that our eye is open. Cool. Set another keyframe there. Let's bring it back. Let's play it a little bit more, and we're going to have our eyelid come down just a little bit so it looks like he's kind of blinking slightly or just being woken up. Play it a little bit more, bring it up again, set another keyframe, and then we are going to let it play to about frame 297, and then we're going to put him back to sleep again. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So he wakes up, does a little blink, does another open, and then he goes back to sleep. Okay. So we also want to animate our pupil. So it looks like he is focusing on something. You, the viewer, would say he's going to be opening up his eyeball, and then his pupil's going to dilate, and it's going to look really cool. So let's go back here, and we can see where we want this animation to start. So we'll start animating our gradient, which is our eyeball, which is our pupil, I should say. We're going to animate our gradient starting around frame 201. So in your eyeball material editor, go into our gradient and let's set a keyframe here. Let's hit play. Let's go forward to the next frame. One more. So just here, we're going to set another keyframe. So what we want to do is, so we want to dilate his pupil. So we're going to drag our red knot out to about here. We're going to drag our black out a little bit, and our white. Nope, not our white. This one. Okay. Set another keyframe. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's a pretty cool effect right there. Looks like he's just waking up and his eyeballs focusing on you, the viewer. So I'm just going to hit Shift F3 to open up my timeline. And we are going to, let's see. Okay. So his pupil dilates to this level, and then it's going to get smaller again. That's what we're going to make it do anyway. So let's lasso all of our knots. We're going to bring them down a bit to about here. And we'll set a keyframe there. Let's go a little bit further. So as his eyelid opens, his pupil is going to get bigger again. Set a keyframe, and as his eyeball closes, as his eyelid closes, I really keep mixing up my eyeballs and my eyelids. This is going to shrink down. I want to set a keyframe there. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so hit play. He wakes up. His pupil gets bigger, gets smaller as his eyelid closes, and it's getting bigger again, and then it's going back to sleep. Okay, cool. So let's see what that is looking like all together. Go back to the beginning and hit play. So our wind is going to blow our blanket off our eyeball, and then our eyelid's going to open up. Pupil dilates, shrinks, grows, shrinks, and he goes back to sleep. Cool. So lastly, we want to add a little background, or it'll be a floor in this case, we could say. So create a plane. Let's call it floor. And we are going to bring that right down on the y-axis so that the eyeball appears to be nice and high. Let's scale that up so that it covers the screen. And we are going to add a displacer deformer. Make that a child of the floor object. And go into the shading tab and let's add some noise. We want to set this to FBM. And we want to turn up our animation speed to about 0.1. Okay, so let's have a look at this now. So you can see that that is animating. It's very subtle. Let's turn up our height. Now you can see it much better. So let's create a material for our floor. We'll call this floor. And we're going to set this to be, I don't know what color. Let's just apply it to our floor and see what we like. I'm going to turn on the interactive render viewer. You know what? I actually like it how it is, to be honest. It's very similar to our eyeball, but I think that's looking pretty cool. One thing I did notice is that our eyelid has these jagged edges. So the reason for that is because we didn't increase the segments of our eyelid. Keep saying eyeball. We didn't increase the segments of our eyelid before we made it editable. And we're not going to be able to increase the segments of it now. because it's editable. So what we could do is we could add a subdivision surface, and that'll smoothen it right out. So what I should have done is basically in my eyelid object increase the segments before I made it editable. But as I made it editable, I no longer have the option to increase segments, so I just added a subdivision surface, so that smoothed it out. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Let's just watch it one more time. So our blanket blows off. Our eyelid opens. Okay, so it looks like it's opened a bit too slowly there. I don't know what happened. It seems like our blanket's been... Looks like our blanket blows off a bit slower than it did before. So this is where our eyelid's going to start animating. Oh no. Okay. That's not where it is. Let me open up my timeline here and let's see what's going on. Okay, so what I've done is this is actually the wrong way around. Our eyelid should be closed instead of opened. So let's fix this right now. Let's go to our first frame, and on our first frame our eyelid should be closed, not open. So let's rotate that around and we can set a keyframe on that. Let's go to our next keyframe and we want it to be open. Set another keyframe. Let's go to our next keyframe and we want it to be slightly closed, which is fine the way it is there. And then it's going to go and open again. And we'll set a keyframe there. And then finally, it is going to close. Okay, so I obviously messed it up there to start. I basically did the inverted version of what I was going for. But this is all helpful for you guys learning, so it's all good. Mistakes are good. Okay, so let's play this one more time. Hopefully it's one more time so we can see how this is looking. Okay. So our blanket blows off, our eyelid is closed. It opens up, but it's really, really slow, so we want to make that happen way sooner. Let's see. So let's rewind this, and we want our eyelid to open just as our blanket blows off. So our blanket is blown off about there. So we want to drag all of our keyframes. Just select our objects here in our timeline and drag them over here. Okay. So now we should be good, hopefully. Let's hope this is the last time we're going to have to watch this. And we can bring this video to an end and you guys can make one of these yourself. So our eyeball opens here and our pupil dilates and gets bigger and smaller with our eyelid, and then he goes back to sleep. Okay, cool. Brilliant. Finally, we have arrived. It only took us half an hour. Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.